When it comes to Andor's commentary on fascism, nobody does it better than Syril Karn, the most pathetic man in the galaxy. Cyril's story is of a man who will not, under any circumstances, self-reflect, who refuses to wake up and see the world around him for what it really is. A man who idolises the ideas of fascism without ever realising that he will never be the man wearing the boot. He is, and always will be, the one being crushed by it. In that way, I think Syril might be the most relatable character in Andor. Not because we're like him, but because most of us have met a Syril, and he is so bloody annoying. If you spend a little too much time online, like me, then you're probably familiar with the insult bootlicker. It's one of those lefty insults that's been so overused at this point that it's lost all meaning, but it does traditionally refer to a real phenomena. People who, in the face of oppression and subjugation, willfully kneel down and submit to the oppressor. This is where the term comes from. It's borrowed from a sex fetish thing, because of course it is, but it's this idea of willingly subjecting yourself to domination. From an outsider's perspective, this can seem like a stupid thing to do. Because it is a stupid thing to do. Why would you worship the boot on your neck? You're supposed to hate the things that cause you pain. You're supposed to fight against them. This is the question that Syril Karn exists to answer. He's a sad man, a weak man, and an incredibly dangerous man, because he's the exact kind of man that fascism appeals to. Syril Karn is not the Ur-Fascist. Syril Karn is the Ur-Bootlicker. The premier example of how fascism destroys even its most loyal subjects. Throughout Andor, Syril is a mirror to Andor himself. The two of them are on opposite sides and parallel arcs throughout the series. Where Andor's trajectory is up, Syril only falls further and further down. When we first meet him, Syril is a cop. Not an official Imperial cop, a corporate cop on a planet the Empire doesn't really care about. And this is the closest to genuine Imperial power that Syril will ever get in his life. Syril is a guy who loves order, loves rules, loves to follow standard procedure and regulation. These are not inherently bad traits. Some people thrive in the chaos of life, some people need structure. If I don't go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time every day, then my entire life falls apart. I, personally, am a man who needs rigid routines. But Syril takes this further than a personality quirk. He sees it as the best, most natural way for everyone to live. Rules keep society functioning, and those who break the rules are therefore breaking the delicate, perfect balance of society. This is why he became a cop. Cops are the enforcers of society's rules. So, when some vagrant murders two of his fellow cops, he sees it as a moral obligation to track that villain down. But there's some complicating factors here. For one, the world does not operate by Cyril's version of morality. Those cops were not good men. They got themselves killed while trying to assault a random stranger. And the second is Cyril's deepest personality flaw, his deep need for external validation. Cyril's home life is rough. He has a condescending, nagging mother who's always refused him that validation, so he's constantly searching for figures of authority that will give him that validation instead. This is also not an inherently evil character trait. Being the kid who reminds the teacher that there's homework due for brownie points doesn't make you a fascist. But it's a combination of personality traits that makes someone extremely vulnerable to fascist manipulation. Syril wants to be part of the Empire for two reasons. One is that he wants power. His social situation has always meant that power is fleeting for him, and the Empire, if you can get in, offers a place for unlimited power, a chance to live the good life that he feels he's been wrongfully denied. He thinks that because the second reason is that he uncritically swallows up every single piece of Imperial propaganda. Since laws are inherently just and it's wrong to question authority, everything that the Empire says must be true. They are a unanimously good force in the galaxy, and dissidents like Andor are just pure evil troublemakers who want chaos to reign. All of these factors mean that Syril talks himself into becoming a fascist without anyone from the Empire ever saying a word to him personally. He starts to live his life and hold himself to the standards of the Empire by choice because the Emperor says that's the best, most true, most beneficial way to live, and he believes it. This is the root of what I find so fascinating and so terrifying about Syril. He is the product of the world he lives in. If you put him in a different show, if you stuck him in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, then he would just be a normal guy. He would be Amy Santiago or Dwight from The Office. The pencil-pushing overachiever who's always sucking up to the boss. We all know someone like this, and they can be annoying sometimes, sure, but they're not evil. Fascism creates an environment where these relatively common personality traits become poisonous, where an inability to question authority makes you the perfect soldier. Syril is a lower to middle class man frustrated with his social position and looking for external validation. He is the perfect mark. Syril starts to embody and enforce the ideals of the Empire in his workplace despite not being part of the Empire himself. In fact, the majority of his colleagues don't really give a shit and just want the day to go by without any big drama, especially his boss, which Syril finds frustrating because he is, on paper, a model employee. He can't abide by the idea that his boss doesn't want to track down the cop killer because in his mind that's a betrayal of everything they, as cops, are supposed to stand for.
2 men dead, line of duty. Colleagues. It's outrageous.
Exactly. The thought of anything less than full engagement on a case like this.
Unconscionable, sir. Dereliction of duty at the minimum.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Well, that, and the fact that fascism demands heroism and exceptionalism as the standard of any citizen, it's not just his job to track down Andor, it's his civic duty. But Syril fails to bring in Andor, in fact he cocks it up rather spectacularly, and that's when his story really begins. Fascism does not tolerate failure. As a system that rejects empathy, it cannot give anyone a second chance. From this point forward, Syril has no hope of ever having any real power under the Empire. And in a traditional story, this might be the point where he starts down the path to redemption. But he doesn't. He doubles down. Because he doesn't question authority, he doesn't blame the Empire for what happened to him, nor does he blame himself. He blames Cassian Andor for everything. Every bad thing that happens to him from this point forward is the fault of that rebel scum Cassian Andor. Any other cause would require a level of self-reflection that Syril is not willing to do. Fascism requires an enemy, and for Syril, Andor becomes that enemy, the cause of all of society's problems, the explanation for why he's not allowed to be happy or succeed. And annoyingly, Syril actually was a good cop. He was able to track down Andor almost immediately. He has an inherent skill for numbers and seeing patterns in data. And when he tries to apply those skills to his new job as a data clerk to find Andor, he draws the attention of the ISB and Dedra. Syril and Dedra's relationship is one of the weirdest in all of television, and that's what makes it so compelling. It's borderline dysfunctional because she's a fascist and he's a fascist wannabe. There is a severe power imbalance between the two of them because of their respective social positions. Syril is, in a way, more attracted to what Dedra is rather than who she is. She is everything that he aspires to be. Driven, independent, and able to wield significant power within the Empire. Neither of them have a good role model for how a relationship is supposed to work. The only role model they have is the Empire, and fascism does not make a good training ground for romance. They try, but they cannot help but manipulate each other to their own advantages, because that's just how fascism teaches you to interact with everyone. The same dynamic is shown between Syril and his former underling, Sergeant Mosk. The two men are similarly driven and have the same love of duty, but fascism does not breed camaraderie, it breeds competition. Syril is not really friends with Mosk. He can't be. Mosk is a competitor under fascism who could potentially steal his position because everyone under fascism thinks the same way. They all seek to increase their own power above all else. When the two of them go to Ferrix at the end of Season 1 to try and capture Andor in the naive belief that it will help them increase their social standing, Syril ends up abandoning Mosk when he actually does get to increase his standing by rescuing Dedra. This shot of Mosk drinking alone on the stairs is the last we ever see of him in the show. Romance adds a complication to this dynamic. Syril and Dedra are supposed to be partners, but the power imbalance between them doesn't really make that possible. Dedra is so much higher up the social ladder than Syril that their view on society is completely different. Syril believes the propaganda, while Dedra is the one writing it. It's important to keep in mind that there is always a bigger fish. Dedra is writing the propaganda, but she herself also believes the propaganda, just a level of propaganda that was written higher up the ladder than her spot. But she's still well above Syril, who's down at the very bottom. The gender dynamics of the relationship are inverted from how they're usually portrayed, with Dedra definitively wearing the trousers. As infatuated with her as Syril may be, that lack of power within his life and his relationships is very emasculating. So, when Dedra gives him the chance to become part of her operation, he jumps at the opportunity, and in doing so, seals his fate. Syril and Dedra both exist within the show to demonstrate different things. Syril illustrates how normal people can become fascists, and Dedra illustrates that fascists are still people, not mythical monsters. In either case, the goal is to show sympathy for the devil. That's why the dinner scene is so important. It's a scene that you could slot into pretty much any show. The meeting of the mum and the girlfriend, a classic sitcom setup. It's a humanising moment for both of them. We get to see that Dedra faces down her boyfriend's mother with more fear and trepidation than how she talks to Orson Krennic. But she sticks up for her man and they emerge stronger. Maybe these two lovebirds are gonna make it. Oh wait, they're fascists. Syril is stupidly eager about the opportunity to be a spy for the ISB. He's giddy about it. This is his way into Imperial power at the very heart of the Empire. Unfortunately for him, he's not really ISB material because he's far too gullible. He never considers the possibility that he's being manipulated. He's receiving the praise and the recognition he's always wanted. He calls a compliment from Dedra's boss the greatest day of his life, and that's enough for him to ignore what's right in front of him. At least, it is for a while. But the problem with being a spy is that you actually get to see the unfiltered, unpropagandistic side of the story. Gorman. God damn it. I don't know what it is, but I cannot read or say Gorman without hearing it in Ben Mendelsohn's voice.
Spiders are not the most unique thing in Gorman.
Iconic stuff. I'm sorry, Gorman, but this man has defined you. There comes a point where even for someone as loyal as Syril, the harm and the malice of fascism becomes impossible to ignore. And in those times, people show you their true colours. Syril likes Gorman. He likes the people there. He can see with his own eyes that the propaganda about Gorman is fake. But he still clings on to this idea of outside influence. That's why he's here. He's here to root out the Cassian Andors that are agitating the Gorman people, leading them astray against the noble empire. And clinging on to this idea, he alienates the Gorman friends he'd made. They all see through him. Either he's a spy, or an idiot, or both, and they no longer have the time for either. The truth about Gorman is impossible to ignore, especially for someone at the scene of the crime like Syril. Ignorance of the truth at this point can only be willful, so he confronts Dedra about it. He strangles her. It's not a pleasant scene, not a redemptive moment. He's angry, lashing out. As angry about being lied to and manipulated as he is about what's being done to Gorman. Everything he's built his life around. Order, structure, loyalty. None of it has ever been rewarded. He was never anything more than a pawn. He recognises that now, so he leaves. Not with any plan, just in a daze, lost to himself. Then the massacre begins. It wouldn't be fair to put all of the blame on Syril. This would have happened without his involvement. It's bad luck Gorman. But nonetheless, he did his part diligently, and this was always going to be the end result. Now would be the time to leave, to wake up, to realise the truth and take up the fight against the Empire. For then he sees him, the evil, the root of all his problems, Cassian Andor, and instinct takes over. Old habits die hard. Somehow, this is all Andor's fault. It must be. He even manages to get the upper hand. He's about to win. But then Cassian asks the big question, the question that makes up the title of the whole episode.
Who are you?
And so ends the sad, sad life of Syril Karn. It's such a perfectly constructed moment. Of course Andor has no idea who he is. They had a brief interaction 4 years ago. How many random Imperials has Andor dealt with since then? Why would he remember Syril? And you can see in his last moments that Syril understands that. He starts to lower the gun. He sees that Andor is not the supervillain that ruined his life. He's just a man like him, a man who's just trying to do the right thing. But it's too little too late. He made his choices, he chose a side, and he pays for that with his life before any of those revelations can amount to anything. To be mourned by just a few and forgotten about by everyone else. It is a tragedy in its own way. Syril sucked. He caused a lot of harm in his attempt to become a fascist because that's what fascism does. He was also a victim of propaganda, manipulation, and his own ego. But what I take from this story is more than a tragedy. It's a cautionary tale. This is what it took for Syril to open his eyes and see the truth. A massacre happening right in front of him. Not the first massacre in the show, not the last one that the Empire will commit, but the one that affected him personally. The rebels don't make a distinction between malice and ignorance, because at the end of the day, the result is the same. Both have blood on their hands. This is what it took for Syril Karn to open his eyes. So the question is, what will it take for you?
Questions are being asked about how an insurrection of this scale could be mounted without the aid and support of outside rebel assistance. In the days to come, as the imperial martyrs of Gorman are mourned, we're sure to learn a great deal more about what happened here today and the price we'll pay for our own safety.
Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to my wonderful patrons for your continued support. If you'd like to see your name up here, or just support the work that I do, then please consider signing up. It would mean a lot to me, as well as a like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. I have plenty of Star Wars videos. In particular, if you enjoyed this video, then I think you'll also enjoy this video about Crosshair from the Bad Batch, or for something else starry, here's a video about Star Trek.